So you think that the looking for patterns everywhere is sort of a result of evolution, and it's sort of a way to, it's sort of helpful in a way, like you said, it's survival tactics being passed down in the
Yeah,
gene.
that's right. Yeah, right. Right. So, in other words, what I'm trying to answer, the problem I'm trying to explain with this model is why people believe weird things. The title of my first book, and the harder problem, why smart people believe weird things. And the answer is in short, well, the common answer you get is, well, people are just dumb or ignorant, uneducated, superstitious, whatever, gullible. That doesn't really explain anything. In fact, I
Right.
think it's more of a feature than a bug. It's not a problem. In our cognition, this is the way, that's the default mode, is to assume more things are real than not, just in case, particularly if they, pose a threat or could pose a threat. Therefore, you kind of fall into that patternicity process. And there's kind of a logic to it, rather than it being a problem that, that's something wrong with our cognition. There's nothing wrong with our cognition. That's normal. So it takes science and critical thinking and rationality to kind of overcome the propensity to do that. Of course, that's what we've been doing for centuries, philosophy and science, developing tools to get around our confirmation bias and hindsight bias and my side bias and
Right.
so forth. Those are normal. What we do today in the modern world, of employing reason and rationality and the tools of science, is unusual.
So we're talking about patternicity, and I actually made a clip. I actually put together some videos that are supposedly real clouds. They look convincing. I mean, but
Mm-hmm.
let's be honest. Who knows? There could be some video editing going on. But these are the ones that people say are real. I put them together, and I added some dramatic music to make it more real, and just to show what you're
Okay.
talking about. So go ahead and play that clip, Derek. What do you think? Are you convinced they're real now?
I've seen some of those. I think a couple of those are photoshopped. Yeah, but I have a whole slideshow of hundreds of those kinds of things. That classic patternicity, of course. There's even a Twitter account, Faces and Things. Yeah, I think it's called Faces and Things, and they post them every day. There's just millions of them, literally. Of course, we're only, so if we just do our 2x2 matrix with 4 cells, the upper left cell here is things that look like stuff that we recognize. Of course, we're leaving out the other 3 cells, which are the gazillion things that random patterns in the environment that don't look like anything, or actual objects that we make or are human or whatever, in which there are no clouds that look like those. And then, of course, the 4th cell is just nothing. And so we have to be careful about, this is kind of a signal detection problem. To what extent does a apparently random pattern actually represent a real phenomenon, or is it just selective perception? And once you conceive of it in that 2x2 matrix with 4 cells, it's obvious that we're just picking out the ones that we happen to recognize. Bats or birds or whatever. Look, my dog looking around, he's not going to see the same thing we see, So we recognize faces. Particularly, the reason that Twitter accounts call faces and things is because instead of hands and things, or legs and things, or torsos and things, we evolved the capacity to detect faces. There's even an area in the temporal lobe called the fusiform gyrus that's allocated mainly for facial recognition. And we know that people with damage to this fusiform gyrus in the temporal lobe uh, have a difficulty seeing faces. Some people are just face blind; they cannot see a face, even their own face. They'll sit there in front of the mirror, and Oliver Sacks writes about this. They'll look at themselves in the mirror. They don't see a face. They see like, oh, it's an apple with some slits, whatever. They literally don't see a face, right? So we know this is programmed. We have a capacity to see faces and things because faces are important to humans for social interactions, and we read emotions in people's faces. We look for tells and cues and micro expressions to see if somebody's lying or how honest they are. And of course, we attach and bond to the faces of our parents when we're born. It's kind of an imprinting there. So faces you don't need much, just two dots and a little slit like that. And people go, oh, that's a face. Again, I have hundreds of examples in my slideshow. And so it's quite common. So we're programmed to see those. So naturally, you can run clips like that all day, and we do see them. Some of them are fascinating, and but of course that it's a human imposition on a random pattern. Now I do distinguish with patternicity. I actually technically define it as the tendency to find meaningful patterns in both meaningless and meaningful noise, because sometimes patterns are real, and so that we want to know them. That's what science is all about. The relationship between the increase in CO2 gases and global warming. That's a pattern. Is it real or is it not? Could be random. It could be meaningful. Looks like it's real,
Right.
despite what the skeptics say. But for a while, people are going, "Oh, I don't know if this global warming thing is real." Well, what they're saying is that the pattern you think you see is not a real pattern, right? When I mentioned signal detection theory, so I have a whole lecture on this in my course, in which I start off with that Soviet officer Petrov, who detected the signal of incoming missiles from the United States into the Soviet Union. And he had to make a split decision. He had like 1 minute to make a decision. Do I report this as real missiles and therefore launch a retaliatory strike against the United States? Or is it just a flock of birds or some other random signal in the noise that's not a true signal? So he ultimately decided, well, there's only 5 blips on the screen. It seems unlikely that the United States was going to launch a first strike against the Soviet Union to dismantle their entire nuclear arsenal. It wouldn't be with 5 little blips, 5 missiles. Got to be an anomaly of some kind. Turns out it wasn't birds. It was this other cloud formation and something to do with the satellites or something like that. So that's a signal detection. The blurry blotch on an X-ray or a CT scan, is that brain cancer? Is it breast cancer? What is that? Or is it just random blotches? So oncologists have a signal detection problem. And the ultimate problem is that we're not omniscient. We don't know 100% what's actually real. So all decisions we make are made under uncertainty. And so we have to act like Bayesian calculators. Well, what are the odds that blip represents a missile or a blob that turns out to be cancer, or it's a real face in the cloud, or whatever it is, the gods talking to us, or whatever you want to interpret that as. So it's all signal detection. Who should I marry? I have all these people I'm dating, which is the right one? That's a signal detection problem. You don't want to make. So again, in my 2x2 cell, here's the signals that turn out to be real missiles, and you don't want to miss that. But on the other hand, you don't want false alarms where you go, okay, it's a blip on the screen. I'm going to say it's an incoming nuclear missiles. Turns out I was wrong. It's a false positive. But that has a huge cost, because if you launch a retaliatory strike, you have World War III, and that's the end of everything. So you don't want to make those kind of mistakes, or just think about stop and frisk. In New York City, they implemented stop and frisk in the 90s because they wanted to capture more criminals. Okay, well, we don't know who the real criminals are. It's a signal detection problem, deciding under uncertainty. So we're going to set the bar pretty low and scoop up as many people as we can, and hopefully we'll get mostly criminals. But the problem with that is you're going to get way more false alarms. You're going to nab innocent people. Or
Right.
terrorists, just think of screening for terrorists. You're going to get far more innocent people based on loosening up of the criteria. Or in criminal justice, you want a pretty high bar for conviction of a crime, because the cost of convicting an innocent person is considered to be so great that we apply what's called Blackstone's criteria. That that the great jurist Blackstone said, better 10 guilty people go free than that one innocent person be found guilty. And that's kind of the standard we've set there. So that's how to think about this issue from a signal detection problem.
So you're telling me that there's no Mother Mary in cheese sandwiches?
That's right. Yes. The grilled cheese sandwich. That's another slide in my slide. I got to actually hold that grilled cheese sandwich that sold for $35,000 on eBay to a Las Vegas casino. I'm not sure they still have it there, but yeah, someone actually took a bite out of the sandwich. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
And since I've written about that, people have sent me a make your own Virgin Mary and toaster. You can toast your own bread to make your own Virgin Mary grilled cheese sandwich. Is pretty funny. Yeah.